Hi everyone, welcome back to the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. This week we are actually working on this little tiny guy that's behind me, and every once in a while I like to throw a jewelry box in the mix. I actually have a huge collection that I bought from a collector in bulk, so I have a huge collection, and sometimes I offer them as gifts when I have time in between pieces and I can accommodate them. I try to fit them in. So this is one of those. It's not quite done yet. I'm actually kind of unsure on the direction, so I'm thinking on it as we speak right now, but by the time I finish this video you guys will see the finished result. I love this color combination. So it's very spring inspired. It feels very light, very fun. And so I think it kind of reimagines some colors in the Wiesel line in ways that you might not normally see them. And combining them together, you can create different and new color combinations. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. It's a little project, but you'd be surprised. I always tell you guys that jewelry boxes usually take just about as much time as a full-size piece of furniture. That is absolutely the case. So you guys, let's get started on this one. I picked up this jewelry box at my local thrift store and it already had an existing white finish, so I gave it a good cleaning and a scuff sanding, removed the existing hardware, and this one's ready for paint. The colors that I'm using are Wiesel paint in petal and native clay. I'm brushing my paint on using a Klingon brush, and I'm using a slightly smaller brush. This is when it's nice to have a variety of brush sizes, because for projects this size, a full-size brush can be a little bit too big. I also go ahead and take my jewelry boxes completely apart. That means removing every bit of little tiny hardware. Even this lid comes off, and I put those in a bin to save those for when it's time to put it back together. You don't want to lose any of those tiny screws. For this lid, I'm doing the same basic blend. I'm using that native clay around the outer edges, a little bit of the petal in the center, and then I'm going to brush those together so that my outer edges have just a little bit of shading to them. This is just my first coat, so my paint doesn't need to be perfect. I just want to get my basic layout figured out, and on my second coat is when I'm really going to perfect these blends. This is a really pretty color combination together. I love these two shades. I try to choose shades that are monochromatic when I'm doing a blending process. It makes it so much easier to work those colors together. Let's pop the lids off my cans and come back for my second coat of paint. My first coat has dried for about 24 hours, and so I'm able to come over and brush that second coat over the top. This second coat is a basic repeat of that first step. I'm brushing the native clay around the outer edges and then that petal into the center, and I'm going to work my colors together. I'm using a light mist of water to keep my paint wet and workable while I blend those colors together. Once my native clay is on, it's time for that little stripe of petal down the center. These two colors really work well together. They are a nice complement to each other. For this step, I'm using a brush for each color, also from my Klingon brushes, and then I'm going to have a dry neutral brush that I use just for blending the two colors together. So I ended up getting my second coat of blended paint on this jewelry box, and I just felt like it was missing a little something. I wanted to kind of revise this finish a little bit and give it a little bit more interest. So I decided to use a stippling technique. Sometimes this happens if you're not happy with what your paint finish looks like. The good news is you can just paint right over the top. So stippling technique just means that I'm going to use a pouncing motion with my brush. This is going to create a light texture with the paint. What I liked better about this technique is the stippling also created a little bit of freckling in the paint. So instead of a smooth blend, it kind of has a little bit of a dotted outline, and it gave it much more interest. I thought the finish looked so much prettier with this technique. So I'm reapplying my paint colors in the same order that they were before, exactly the same places, only this time to work them together, I'm going to use this pouncing motion instead. I alternated my brushes, which alternates the colors, and I'm just going to overlap those colors until I like how they look. For the stippling, I did also have a brush for each color and then a dry neutral brush, and I just used that dry neutral brush to pounce over the areas where the colors are blending together. I ended up being so much happier with this technique on this piece than I was with the blend. I feel like it was just too small of a surface to really get that smooth blend that I like. And the pouncing actually gave it kind of a suede texture, which was really pretty. My next step on this one is going to be to add a little bit of black wax to the edges. This is Annie Sloan black wax, and I'm just using a synthetic bristle brush, and I'm lightly dry brushing a little bit of that wax onto the edges just to add a tiny bit of shading. We're not done with this box just yet, but I added a little bit of Shiny Star Decor wax, which was the silver around the edges, and then I put my hardware on to just photograph this one with the existing paint finish. It's a beautiful paint finish on its own, but I chose to add this new transfer from Redesign with Prima. This transfer is from the Pastel Artistry collection, and I love the colors against this pink backdrop. I'm just going to rub it on using the transfer tool that comes in the package. This jewelry box is a fairly small surface, so I only used one piece of the middy transfer from this collection, and I'll save the other pieces of this transfer for other projects, so it's really nice that you can get multiple projects out of one transfer. I have a little bit of excess transfer up at the top, and I'm going to cut this off, and I ended up using this under the lid of the jewelry box around the mirror to add a little bit of the same pattern there. Once I've rubbed over the entire transfer completely, I can start pulling back the clear backing sheet with my fingers, and I'm just checking to make sure that transfer is staying with my jewelry box as I go. I'm going to press it down into those crevices, and anywhere I feel like the transfer is pulling back, I'll give it another rub with the transfer tool. For this piece, I decided to wrap it around the edge of this jewelry box, and so one part of it appears on the front and the next part appears on the side. So I just press that down, wrapping it with my fingers, and then I'm able to do the same process and pull that clear backing sheet off, and the transfer will wrap from the front to the side of my jewelry box. I use my fingers to press it down into place, and then I'll use the Redesign with Prima polishing pad to finish it off. I sealed this one using 2 coats of Wisal matte varnish and added that same hardware back on. I feel like the transfer really completed this piece. It was exactly what it needed. I hope you guys enjoyed this process. You can find links for everything I used in the description for this post. You can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. Don't forget to click that subscribe button.